Hello, everyone. So, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone, to all the joiners that has joined us from everywhere. So, we gonna start just in 3 minutes to give the chance to for all the registrants to join us. Okay, so let's start. First of all, let me introduce myself. I'm Mahmoud El-Siba. I'm Sales Director in SecurityGen, and I'm responsible for the sales activities and the engagement with the customer for the security audits and security services that included in SecurityGen portfolio with over 15 years experience in the telecom industry. Today with me on the webinar, my colleague Mohammed Al-Qaid. And, Mohammed, if you can introduce yourself.
Thank you, Mahmoud. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us in this discussion about the very important topic, the mobile money fraud. My name is Mohammed Al-Qaid. I'm Senior Pre-Sales Engineer at SecurityGen, serving the MENA region. I have over 13 years of experience in cybersecurity, focused on telecom and service providers across the region. I recently joined the SecurityGen, so today I will step back and sit with you guys and leave the stage for Mahmoud to enrich our knowledge with the great experience he have in mobile security in general and mobile money specific. I will try to be your voice today to interrupt Mahmoud when needed, since I'm the only one who can unmute himself. And of course, you can share your question in the question and answer section, and we will answer them at the end of the session. So the stage is yours, Mahmoud.
Thanks, Mohammed. So let's explore our today's agenda about the mobile money webinar, where we will start with how the service or industry or technology, you can call it any means, how it started from, what is the growth in terms of revenue and number of subscribers that they are using this service, and how could be the global distribution of this service, which country is using the most, and so on. So, and then we will go for recap for the attack vectors, how such a service, which this huge amount of transaction can be impacted by many types of attack vectors. And we will see also the attack surface itself, how it can be impacting the transactions, how it can reveal some important information like the PIN code of the users and their personal information. Also, some examples from the threat intelligence through the assessments that we have made or from the attacks that is introduced in the market and published on the internet. And also we will go beyond this on the application part, where this is somehow the current channel or the current methodologies that the users are using for making the mobile money service actions. So let's go. So starting from the beginning, how the mobile money service has started, how it has been somehow driven by the need of the financial inclusion in different regions, and how it started with a simple idea that you can buy, using SMS or USSD, you can somehow top up your balance or somehow buy some purchases on the internet. Of course, with a small transaction, and then this was back to the 2000, which means that these services existing since like 2 decades now. And of course, after many years since start of 2000, between 2010 and 2015, there is a rapid adoption for some specific region like Sub-Saharan or South Asia, with new service types like bill payments and more transaction in terms of money transfers and so on. And here is exactly where the GSMA became more involved to put the standards and put the insights of the market and add the forecast foreseens for how the service or technology is going forward. Some actions that has been, happened in the world like the COVID, which of course helped more to empower this service more and, to find an alternative, safe alternative for the cash and so on. And of course, some uses and some use cases in the market, like integration with the small businesses and the commercial areas and public services, also has contributed to make this service growing fast. And in the last 2 or 3 years, it became more and more use cases for the enterprises, like making payroll or pensions or payments, lending, insurance, and also the global reach became more and more. And this, of course, made the regulators and the security guys give more, attention to such a service with these huge transactions that we're gonna take an idea in a minute, to see how much money is coming out from such technology or service, how many users are using it till now. So this actually, makes the regulators make more focus about it. And actually, I feel proud that in my home country, Egypt, we are ranked as the top of global mobile money regulations indices. So moving to the global view in terms of a number of transaction, three actually verticals that we are displaying here, like the transaction volume, transaction counts, and active users. We can see that we have reached something like 2.1 trillion in terms of the transaction volume in USD, which of course it's a huge amount of money that's coming out from this service. Also, we can see that transaction counts became something like 1.5 million, with something also like 1.5 million number of users, active users mainly.
Can I interrupt you, Mahmoud? Just
Sure, Mohammed.
okay. So what you said regarding the services, say about the history of it, because I do recall like mobile money is something related to the e-wallet, something like that. This is what I do recall.
Yeah.
But you mentioned that there was other services that was used already early in the 2000s, right?
Yes.
What kind of service? Is it the thing that
Actually, yeah, it was a simple thing like top up, for your balance, like that. I want to purchase some extra minutes for my minutes balance for to making more calls or so. So it was just simple, and even the transaction channels, it was like only SMS or USSD, where you can type sub
okay,
codes to in order to gain more balance in your account. It was just
okay,
this simple idea. And then, of course, in for the countries like somehow lacking the making bank accounts or something like this for some users or some people, of course mobile money was a resort for this, so
yeah,
they are using the mobile money to transfer money for each other or even to purchase. Of course, this is a direction for the governments also to watch what is, where is the money come from and what coming to where. So, of course, we are somehow following the fintech's revolutions and how the digital transformation in terms of payments and so on, is moving forward. So that's why this somehow makes this service become beyond only for mobile money transaction or sending money to each other to the levels that we have mentioned, like it's using now for payroll, pensions, insurance, and so on.
so let's say at the start it was using your own balance at the telcos to use the services.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
This was the simple idea that it started from.
Okay, okay. And a big jump actually.
Yeah, yeah, of course. And we have seen that some curfews has somehow supported this to make it even more progressive, like the COVID, as we have mentioned. You
Yeah,
know, we need to find alternative for the cash and so on, to make somehow the remote transaction because of the circumstances that has been, somehow followed by this COVID.
yeah, amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. So moving forward to have some deeper look about what could be the sub-regions or the countries that somehow has the biggest contribution. We see here that Sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia, one of the leadest areas that is using the mobile money service. Why actually sub-Saharan Africa? What is the reason behind this? Because actually, in some of the African markets or the African countries, they are lacking the banking infrastructure. That's why the mobile money service is a resort for making transaction and purchasing, and doing the same service that the bank will do. So we can see here, of course, different, differentiation from sub-Saharan with respect to the different markets for the reasons that we have mentioned. So we'll somehow with somehow deeper look to the African market or sub-Saharan, we will see that somehow this continent is counts almost 50 or 60% of the global transactions in terms of the absolute amount of money or even the number of active users or the transaction counts. Of course,
So,
this will help this service to grow more and more in sub-Saharan and somehow to be the main driver of such a service.
okay, so why this region, let's say, or why sub-Saharan are using this compared to other regions, let's say? Why
Yeah.
do you think the need for it? Or
Yeah, because of many reasons, mainly the most important one, what I have mentioned recently, that in most of countries in Africa and also somehow the slacking the banking infrastructure, and somehow for simple users, it is easy for them to use a mobile wallet than, going to the bank and open a bank account on these complications. So mobile money for them is a resort to do all the transaction in terms of purchasing, in terms of sending money to each other and so on.
and let's say that in the future it will be still increasing, right?
Yeah, of course, it's
There's no
still
reason for it.
increasing. The African market, we can say that is somehow the driver of this service. Of course, the other regions has its own contribution, but let's say that sub-Saharan Africa, it's somehow the dominant of this service.
Yeah, because the need for it, yeah, of course.
Yeah, exactly. And we can see here, of course, that the jump has happened since 2015 when a lot of service providers has introduced to the market through many players or telecom operators. And of course, the period of COVID where the transactions, has become more and more. And we see here that this progress is still increasing even beyond 2025. So a deeper look to Sub-Saharan, we will see that somehow East and West Africa are the most contributors on Sub-Saharan with something like 500 million users and near 1 billion amount of money that coming from, and of course there is a lot of service providers that somehow able to provide this service for the customers in Africa, something like 178 providers. Why actually there is so many? Because actually the revenue is coming from it is pretty huge. We can see here how much is the contribution for some service provider, how's mobile money, it's somehow contributing almost 30 or 40% of the revenues that is, coming from the mobile money service. And this actually is the direction of many mobile operators because they don't want to be somehow selling only voice and data, this direction since I think 2010 or so, that of course they wanted to be more and more into business and to find a new ways of revenues. So mobile money, of course, one of the best ideas that came to the markets, especially for Africa to represent, one of the contributors of the revenues. So in a nutshell, if we want to somehow give the main highlights about this, we will see that for the global market, we are talking about 2.1 billion registered mobile money accounts, where year to year to gross like 14%. Also, the value of transactions per day, it's something like 44.6 billion with 16% gross. And the huge amount of transaction per day is like 1.6 trillion per day with 19% gross. All this information, somehow has been published by the GSMA and trusted sources. So here we see, there is a lot of incidents that can happen for different reasons, like SIM swap or MZ catchers or, somehow social engineering that can lead to many incidents that can impact such as a service. So we can see that, of course, a lot of lost money that coming from such incidents, because of course the usage is growing. So of course, this will give the attackers to perform some threat activities and fraudulent activities for such service. And actually somehow some of these incidents back to 2015, some of them are recent, since a couple of years ago. Now let's see how could be.
Can I just have a quick question regarding the
vectors? Yeah.
Yes, that's fine. So are those attacks, let's say, focused on this region or sub-Saharan because it's the highest numbers, the more attractive, let's say, or it's going worldwide? Is there a big
exactly. It's of course going worldwide because it's a global actions that impacting. But of course, as long as sub-Saharan has somehow the biggest contribution in terms of revenue, in terms of transaction, of course, it's somehow appealing, more attracted to the scammers and the attackers to perform some fraudulent activities and trying to steal this amount of money. So somehow, of course, talking about the attack types that can lead to such incidents, we are talking about, somehow same attack vectors or the attack types that can impact many services. Of course, some of them are more relevant to the mobile money service. But let's say about the identity theft, where how the attacker can get the credential of specific users or even to get its password by many ways like social engineering or even intercept some traffic that can lead to that this identity can be theft. And by this identity, I can perform some fraudulent activities, Also, the identity spoofing or network spoofing, where the users of the mobile money service can receive messages from the spoofed or the, somehow can, someone can, get the identity of the network, spoof the identity of the network, sending some SMSs or USSD to the users, just to make them, force them to make some transactions. Like, you will get somehow amount of money cash as a cashback if you perform this kind of transaction. Also affecting the availability of the service is one of the concerns of the type of attacks. We'll see some examples where the attackers can impact the availability of the service and isolate the service provider or the users themselves. So many types of attacks that can impact the service, and of course, by nature, it's something normal, with this huge amount of transactions, of course, the attack types will appear. So moving forward and understanding that the telecom ecosystem is very somehow complicated with many layers, many communications. So of course the attackers will, somehow choose the weakest link to perform the threat actors. Like they don't need to go for some sophisticated ways to compromise the mobile money applications. They can use somehow more easy ways to compromise or impact the service or steal some money from mobile wallet or something like this. So we will see some examples about how the radio access network can be compromised with some ways, or even the messaging channels, USSD or SMS, how it can be compromised to perform some fraudulent activities. And the interesting thing also about the mobile money service, it's something like consists of some layers, like. As you see in the past, users were using only SMS and USSD to perform the transactions. And now, on the progressing, time of the service where there is applications where, somehow easy GUI to make these, somehow using this service is easy for the users. Of course, a lot of attack services has been introduced by such, facility that you can use the website or use the application to make the transaction. So the interesting thing that is somehow all the vulnerabilities or the weaknesses that can be compromised by the attacker, since the use of the SMS and it's kept the same and has introduced a new attack surface when they are using the web or the application itself. So from our experience, yeah, sure.
Get back to the previous.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so here, let's say the attack surface are the SS7, the RAN network, right? That we are focusing on.
It's not only this, of course, there is a lot of layers that can be contributing on this, like as I told, the web applications, application APIs,
Yeah, of course.
signaling protocols, SMPP, S7, or any other, methodology. All of these, are somehow contributing on introducing this attack surface to the network. You will be surprised that, when we are doing some assessment for the mobile money service provider, I didn't see the same results from any operators. So sometimes you will find that the weakness is coming from the website, coming from the applications, coming from the signaling, coming from the USSD or SMS manipulation. So there is something like 1,000 reasons for this to make this, somehow this service can be impacted by any cyber attack or so.
Okay, so let's say that there is many doors, but the easiest way, or let's say the one-way attacks will be from the SS7, from the RAN network, while other might be more complicated or might need some information.
Yeah, I will give you an example.
Right?
I will give you an example when it comes to the radio access network. Of course,
Oh,
the attacker, as we have mentioned, that he will choose the weakest link to compromise the network from. So somehow, if the user of the mobile money service can bet on 4G technology or 3G technology, where the security measure became more sophisticated and so on. So we
okay.
will do anything to push the user for the 2G technology in order to, somehow um, choose how, can compromise the service or, impact the service. So of course, back to the era of the 2G, it was the easiest way to do so
Weakest
by,
point.
using these encryption, weak encryption techniques and so on, to impact the service. So this is how this go, At the end, the attacker will choose the easiest way to compromise the network, not doing any sophisticated thing, even, by the social engineering or so. It can be, it can happen.
Yeah,
Okay.
of course.
So in a simple word, he will through a group of hawks and, choose the easiest way to catch the fish.
Yeah, so the main thing that the information that's carried over the system, let's say, that's
Yes,
the important
exactly.
thing that
Yeah, there is
that
many
does
information,
allow
of
for.
course, that carried over the seven protocols or any other protocols
Yeah, yeah.
in plain text or the SMPP. So, of course,
Or
security
anything.
measures are so huge. You can follow, any of the security measures that you can be introduced by GSMA or NISA or any other, you know,
Yeah.
but at the last part of the webinar, we can see that how the mitigation action, how we can think about how we can protect this service.
Thank you. Good.
So introducing, as long as we were talking about the radio access risk like the Roche BTS or MC catcher, where the attackers can use those things to intercept the traffic that going through the air interface, or even steal the identity or intercept the USSD or the one-time password messages. You will see here also location tracking. So of course, the attack will not be, addressed for specific location tracking, but it will somehow detect that the user is on the shop, on the market, or, there is a potential that he's now using the mobile money service. Now the attacker can intercept the one-time password that he's using for the moment. Of course, also the denial of service is one of the things that can be impacted. So, a group of users that is somehow in a specific place or market or so. So, of course, this will isolate them, so they can be stealed without even that they are known. So we will see here some of the equipments. Even you can, transform a car to represent as a cell site that boosting SMSs or phishing links or so.
I was wondering just like how easy it is to get such things like this, because it's been trending like lately, So it's
Yeah.
really easy to buy, to have an MZ catcher, to have all of
Yeah,
this.
actually, I was surprised that something now somehow easy. No, not only even from the dark web or so. You can buy such things from the public internet. You will see things like MZ catchers that where you can buy it.
No.
And the interesting thing that it's only even not the MC catchers. You will find a lot of interesting things that that you can get from internet. I will show you an example in a minute also, not only about the MZ catchers or the fake BTS, but let's somehow introduce some examples about what could be the real scenarios or the real threat vectors that we have found from real assessment. Like here, one of the assessment we have discovered subscriber cloning through the RAN, where the attacker can obtain the TMZ due to the lack of, or less TMZ update period. So the TMZ is not changing due to weak encryption key or so. And even we found that the mobile equipment identity also can be got from from the RAN. So the attacker can, clone the subscriber, get this her identity, and take over his account and perform some fraudulent or some transaction via USSD or something, and even can intercept this USSD of this cloned subscriber. This is actually examples from a real operator where they are introducing this service. And by doing assessment to the radio access interfaces, we discover such things. So back to the information that you can get from the internet. It's not, of course, mainly about the S7 or Z-Day attacks. It's about that these kind of information is somehow now in the internet. So it's easy to get. And because, of course, some posts like this, which coming from the social media, introduce the demands for something like this. So you can get the information about zero-day attacks that someone can perform or so, and then you can, anyone can get the information and perform these threat activities. Um,
It's
so
amazing how
it
cheap it
becomes
is.
more easier.
It's amazing how cheap and easy it is comparing to let's say, to the targeted amount of money that you might get from
Yeah,
it.
so,
It's
somehow
really,
sometimes it's easy. It's not, of course, that cheap because this somehow amount of money not reasonable somehow for zero-day attacks. But the idea is that something like this is available on the internet for everyone,
yeah,
not even the dark web. I found it
yeah,
in
that's it.
Twitter. So this is the message that this kind of information is available for everyone. So anyone that somehow has played with mind, that he
There
can
should be a
somehow get
restriction
it.
for this, yeah.
Yeah, of course. So how we can, of course, by compromising those channels. You can imagine when the user supposes that he is receiving some messages from the service provider with very sensitive information like the one-time password or the his credentials or something like this. Imagine the fact when the attacker can intercept this message and get the information of the user and perform these activities on behalf of the users. So the scary thing also that the user will not know that this is happening already. So the attacker can perform some financial transaction on behalf of him without his knowledge. Also, the denial of service, where the attacker can impact the mobile money service by sending a lot of unnecessary messages to the mobile service provider or the mobile money service provider to impact the service itself to make it unavailable. So many users will trying to use the service and perform some mobile money transactions, and they will not be able to do this. Why? Because actually the service is down. How it is down? By somehow overwhelming the network by many requests, unnecessary requests that will exhaust its resources. So of isolation of the users, of course, something very dangerous that maybe in this period of denial of service, the attacker will be able to use their mobile money wallet or something like this. So also, as long as we were talking about the USSD, so USSD manipulation also one of the threats that can be introduced. So there is a possibility to create or interact the customer data. The customer uses the codes and they use this vulnerability to perform some transaction on behalf of the users. Also the SMS injection, where the service provider can send a mass SMS to the group of users, where with some instruction or something. So when we were talking about the network spoofing and so on, when you receive some links from the trusted service providers that you usually, use to deal with. So imagine when you receive a link, that you have received some bonus or prices, and this link can be, of course, a phishing link where the user can reveal some information about himself without knowing this. So this is actually some of the examples that has been introduced and represent some threat actors for the mobile money service. Apart from this, also the mobile applications, where of course weak bin codes can be compromised either by social engineering or by accessing the app itself, where the personal information from the logs or the memory can be revealed to the attackers if he succeeded to get in access. So he will have an access to the transactions history and so on, and will succeed to get more information about the users, how to what numbers they are sending this money, how they are sending, by compromising also the application APIs. This can be also a possibility to introduce these threat actors. Uh, of course, many users now are using jailbreak or rooting to have some extra functionalities to their phones. Of course, this can represent introducing attack surface for the attacker itself. So by jailbreaking or the not detecting the jailbreaking or any of the handsets, this can introduce the possibility for the attacker to compromise these applications. So
I believe
many
also
attacks,
maybe
yeah,
I believe also maybe let's say you have to be up to date all the time in order just to be secure enough
yeah,
with the software version and etc. Yeah.
yeah,
So I
of
think
course.
that
This
will
is
be
actually will bring
win-win.
us to the mitigation actions, where of course all of the service providers, can give these guidelines to their users about activating the multi-factor authentication or not sharing the OTP or the PIN codes to anyone. Of course, as you have said, keeping the software version up to date all the time, or avoid installing unknown apps from untrusted sources. This also can introduce, let's say, attack vectors or something, to the service itself. Also, some simple things, can make you avoid such attack vectors, like locking screen by biometric, But when it comes to the mobile service provider, which of course has somehow the biggest role, beside of course the regulators and the guys that are interested to introduce such security measures for the for the industry. So to be honest, there is no silver bullet about this. There is something that you will do, and you will be avoiding all these risks. It's somehow continuous work. Of course, there is a lot of things that has been introduced by the industry bodies like GSMA, like ENISA, where you can, somehow set the configuration, which of course something very boring, that you apply all the security measures, but after all this, there is some gaps that's still, discovered. So the best way to discover the gaps, to discover the weaknesses, is somehow to do the assessments, or to act somehow like the methodology that we are following when we are introducing the mobile money service for any operators or service provider. We are acting like the attacker himself. We are trying to access the service or impact the service by many means, through the applications, through the signaling, through the APIs, through many means that will make these things happen and will help the service providers to discover what could be the reasons that can impact such a service. So, of course, all these things can be, applied for the mobile money service to protect this huge amount of transactions that we have seen, and to somehow empower more the users and encourage them to use the mobile money service.
It is actually a big challenge for all the operators, because the amount of money that's been using on this uh, is very attractive for the attackers. I would like just to summarize our approach here. Again, as SecurityGen, we usually pretend to be like the bad guys here, and we find the vulnerabilities, find the open doors. Then we help operators in fixing and securing those doors, let's say, and maintaining them through different and many ways that will suit all the providers, we hope. So
Yes, exactly. So I don't know if there is somehow questions on the chat. Let's see together. So a question that, who is responsible for protecting the service and securing users' funds? Is there a specific party officially accountable for this? Actually, as from what we have seen in the mitigation action, it is the responsibility of all the parties. I mean, the service providers has a lot of action to do to protect this amount of transactions. Also, the users themselves has its own rule to protect their mobile money accounts, to enable the security measures that is somehow guided by the mobile money service. Also, the regulators or the entities or the governmental entities are also responsible to somehow reveal those security guidelines for the service providers and the users, to make such a service is secured and to avoid the threat actors that we have talked about. Another question, is there any overreaching regulations covering this service, or does it vary by country? I'm assuming that all the regulators, of course, concerned about this service, because it's involved a lot of transactions, involved money, of the users, their balance and so on. But of course, let's say that the security guidelines that is introduced by the regulators is different from one to another, and to what extent these security regulations is a must to be applied, or it's just recommendation. It's different from regulator to another, as we have
I
seen.
believe I
Yeah.
believe in the near future it might be like banks, in the regulation they will let's say, work
Somehow it's
rather
it's a
than
must
zero.
before launching such a service, to ensure that you are following the guidelines to be able to introduce such a service.
Yeah,
Without these guidelines, you will not be able to get somehow the certification or the license to introduce
exactly.
these things. Another question, based on our experience, which part of the ecosystem are the most vulnerable and which ones are most frequently exploited? So this is a very interesting question. So talking about, from the experience, I cannot identify which part of the ecosystem because, as I told, we have done several assessment for many of the mobile money service providers. I can claim that there is no report is somehow matching each other. But the idea is, as we have mentioned, if I put myself on the shoes of the attacker, of course, I will choose the most easy way to compromise the system, the ecosystem. So we have seen a lot of methods like the RAM, MZ catchers, how you can exploit the S7 protocols as long as somehow it's legacy signaling protocols and it will have a lot of vulnerabilities or weaknesses that can impact the service. But to define one specific thing, that is this is the most contributor and or the one that mostly impacting the service, it's very hard to say something like this. Um, Another one. So could you please clarify once again what you recommend to address these threats? Is there kind of solution or approach available to fix these weaknesses? The solution, of course, will be depending on what you will discover. So the what I will recommend is how to uncover the threats that you may face in the future. So it's very important to discover the weaknesses. How you will discover the weaknesses? Uh, in most ways, the assessment is the best approach to do so. So you assess your own system, you assess your service provider in terms of many aspects like the signaling, like the RAN, like the API, like the application. And once you put your hand on the weaknesses, you'll be able to do the right mitigation actions and protect yourself from such weak gap on the ecosystem.
So this is, let's say, the first step you have to go with.
There is a question here. Is there any security framework or benchmarking to control mobile money fraud by JSMA or ISO or NIST? Yes, actually, all these, all these organization has introduced their own view or security recommendations about, about the mobile money service. But the issue is how you can confirm that this regulation has really applied to your ecosystem. As we have mentioned, assessment of the ecosystem is the most efficient way that you can confirm that is such best practices or guidelines has been already applied to the ecosystem. Um, So here, what is the best possible way to secure pins across the USSD networks? So for USSD, actually, it is not secured by default. It should be phased out entirely of the process in general. Because even if you're putting somehow a very sophisticated bin or something like this, the USSD manipulation at the end is possible. So the attacker can manipulate it and get the receipted bins that you have entered already. Uh, So just last check for the questions that we may receive. I see no more. But of course, the platform is open and the comments are open for the audience to post any question or inquiry. And of course, we will be more than happy to support you. So thank you everyone for attending this webinar, and hopefully we introduced a better idea about the mobile money service, how it is somehow introduced to the market, how it can be impacted. And if there is any inquiry, we will be happy to answer your questions. So thank you everyone. Thank you and have a nice day.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mahmoud, for this.
Thank you, Muhammad. Thank you for joining me in the webinar. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I learned something new today. So thank you.
Thank you.
Have a nice day.
Thank you.